Geek Out! Hey, and welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
And this week, of course, we've got another interview. Surprise, surprise. Jake, I think that your gateway book into Image Comics, there was two. There was Bedlam by Nick Spencer and Riley Rosmo.
Yes.
But the other one was Luther Strode by Justin Jordan and Trad Moore.
Yes.
And if I'm not just saying this to say this, because it's like, and this week we have an interview with none of those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this week,
Todd McFarlane.
Yeah.
That'd be the Mad Notes.
God.
Speaking of Image Comics and Jake and Spawn.
Yeah.
But we have a really cool fucking interview.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
It's the second part of our interview with Justin Jordan.
Yes. Which was awesome.
Awesome. We talk about the burgeoning DC comic scene, because he's been a fixture at Awesome Con every year.
Yeah.
DC Comics as in Washington, D.C. comic scene.
Though we talk about
we
his
do.
DC Comics work, too,
It's true. That's
including Godhead.
Yeah. And Deathstroke. And he sounds surprised that I read Deathstroke.
And the, of course,
statistically speaking, very few people.
the book was canceled, but it was a good run.
No, his stuff was awesome.
It was a course correction, and I'm
Yeah.
sad it didn't last longer. And of course, Godhead.
Yeah.
But the other, of course, we talked to his other partner in crime.
Ooh.
Are you okay there?
I'm good.
Trad Moore.
Yes.
Who we've known. We first crossed paths personally with Trad at Baltimore Comic Con, I guess about 3 years ago now.
Thanks to Corey Murphy.
Yeah, I had drinks with him in New York. What was that party?
Was
that 2013?
Was that my last year?
Yes, as a resident.
Yeah, it was 2013.
So that also 3 years ago, and then I guess I didn't see Trad for like 2 years. But so
I met Ron Mars at that.
Right,
at
at that party.
Got to thank him for Emerald Twilight.
There you go. But yeah, so we're talking to both those gentlemen, and here they are talking about the last installment of the Luther Strode trilogy, The Legacy of Luther Strode. So without much further ado, let's give it back to Justin and then over to Trad. Now, to change gears, the last volume, hopefully not the last volume, but it's billed as the last volume of Luther.
Oh, it's the last volume.
Oh man, of Luther Strode is out. At least as of the recording of this episode on July 6th. Is it so? Had you known this was going to end with this final confrontation between Strode and Kane at the end? Was it always building to this?
Oh yeah, the basic outline of how all three series would exist if we got to do all three of them, which was by no means a done deal. We kind of knew from not necessarily the beginning, but certainly before the first issue of the first series came out. When I was writing the series to begin with, it became very clear to me that if we were able to do more of them, there was a very distinct kind of 3-arc story there that would ultimately end with Luther kind of confronting Kane and bringing sort of the themes of it full circle. So I was really glad that we got to do it. That's sort of a rare deal. Like, when the first Strode, Strange Challenge Luther Strode, first issue came out in 2011. October of 2011, and Image was not yet what it was going to become. So bringing out brand new creators, brand new series, it was remarkable that we actually managed to make money on it, and we were able to kind of kickstart right into having actual careers, and that allowed us to actually kind of do the series as we wanted to do the series. And we very much did the series the way we wanted to do the series, which is why the first issue of this series is 40 fucking pages long, which I don't recommend if you're trying to stay on schedule, by the way. But we were able to do what we wanted to do, and people seemed to dig it, which is about as much as you can ask for.
Can you kind of talk about how you guys came up with the story and meeting, Trad Moore, the artist? Because, I've read, I guess, in articles I've seen around, like, kind of like Sam was saying with Spread, it being kind of the John Carpenter Tremors thing, that this is, at least the first volume, is kind of like the Peter Parker without the Uncle Ben, moral center. And then, this, because for me, for anyone out there who doesn't know or hasn't read Luther Strode, for me, I think it's one of the best comics of the decade. And I'm not just saying that because you're on the show. Like, I really think it is one of the best comic books I've read. And my my kind of funny background with the story was our good friend Corey Murphy, who now works for Image.
She gave it right.
She put the comic book in my hand because I had this like weird obsession with hockey masks, and it's not just because. And it's funny because I'm
Casey Jones.
Yeah, it's not just because of Casey Jones. I love Jason, but I'm a Team Michael Myers guy too. But she basically was like, "You like Casey Jones? Read this comic book." And I was like, "Okay." And it's so much more obviously than that. But that's what really kind of opened the door for me. And it's just this like, you hit it out of the park with the writing, and obviously finding Trad to work with on the book. His art is stunning and only gets better as the series goes on to really see it progress. But how did you guys come about with the story in the first place?
Well, the story of the first one is much more just a me thing, story-wise, which was not the case with the subsequent ones. Legacy certainly was fully co-written by me and Trad. But I came up with the idea for the first one, and like Spread, it was kind of, again, one of those sort of things where various kind of disparate ideas just banged together. One of them was the idea of there's not a whole lot of light between being, say, Jason Voorhees and being the Punisher. If either one of them decides you've done wrong and decides to kill you, that's it. Mm-hmm. You can't reason with them. You can't kill them. You can't stop them. The difference is the Punisher might talk to you and he'll shoot you. Otherwise, not a huge difference. And so I kind of had that idea in mind, and I kind of was thinking about the idea of these old Charles Atlas style ads, and the Charles Atlas ads themselves were not bad for this, but the ads that were mimicking the Charles Atlas style would almost pretty much flat out guarantee you they were going to make you immortal and give you superpowers. Yes. And I kind of went with the idea of what if they did for certain people. And then, there's the probably most concise way of describing Strode is indeed that it is Peter Parker without Uncle Ben. And it was one of the things I could have looked at. It's sort of, I had this idea of the first Strode as kind of a classic tragedy in that the problems all sort of spin out of Luther's decisions, and none of them are bad decisions. They are not malicious decisions. They are the sort of decisions you make when you don't have, when you've basically got the wisdom of a teenager and you don't have the insight to see the second and third order effects of what you do and where it's going to go. And I thought that was an interesting take on superheroing that I hadn't seen a lot of, you know what I mean? Like, even though Spider-Man itself kind of makes a thing about, certainly the earlier ones when Peter's, more standard high school student and stuff, they do make about being a high school student and trying to do all this stuff, but for the most part, he makes the right decisions and does the right things, and that's not my experience of having been a teenager. Things worked out all right, but I did a lot of stupid shit when I was a teenager just because it wasn't that I was dumb. It was just I just didn't have a sufficient body of life experience and, the ability to think forward enough to do it. And that's kind of the thing about being a teenager. It doesn't matter how smart you are most of the time. You just don't have the pool of knowledge to draw from. And certainly, I, personally had the benefit of I do come from a good family, but when you don't, it gets really hard if you don't have the role models that you really probably should, or somebody there to kind of give you the guidance and stuff. And that's, even in the context of the story, that's not meant to knock Luther's mom. Luther's mom is trying to deal with a really hard situation and has been dealing with a hard situation all of Luther's life. And that kind of curtails her ability to guide Luther where he needed to go. It's not anybody's fault. That's just sort of how it goes. And, those all sort of jammed together to become, what the book ultimately was. And there was just kind of a lot of tropes that I sort of wanted to look at and examine. Some of those sprang from, some of them are for everything. The idea of, well, I'm going to get all buff and get the girl. That's, explicitly in the Charles Atlas ads. That's the hero of the beach thing. Mm-hmm. But, there's also this idea of, the manic pixie dream girl, and I'm going to love her, and she'll be awesome, and all this kind of stuff. And then, that's just not how life is. And so one of the kind of recurring themes in the first Strode, certainly, is the difference between what you imagine you're going to get and what you actually do get.
Yeah.
So, and I thought that considering a lot of teenage superhero stuff is sort of a wish fulfillment thing, is I kind of wanted to look at the darker side of wish fulfillment.
Yeah, I'm also really glad you touched on, because especially in that first volume, Luther Strode dealing with the repercussion of his actions was something that I really found, kind of refreshing to see in a comic book like that. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's out there, but there's definitely some stuff that, it comes back to bite him in the ass big time in that first volume. And that was something I really enjoyed seeing with that, with that character.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the more interesting kind of ways of doing it is, it's like I said, like you can't, if you look at Luther's actions in retrospect, like, yeah, you can see where he's going wrong, but like they're all made with the best of intentions.
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
That's life, man. Like, things echo, things spiral.
Well, there was always kind of like, even though Luther makes, the occasional mistakes, certainly by like Legacy of Luther Strode, where he's very clearly like, look, I don't want to kill you, to like literally every fight he gets into, but then he's like, but that doesn't mean I won't.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the series as a whole is to a certain extent, oh God help me, I'm going to use this phrase, a meditation on violence. As pretentious as that sounds, it's certainly me thinking about the notion of violence and whether you can turn violence to good ends and all that kind of stuff, because like a lot of things, there's a couple of contradictory things that all seem to be true, which is, on one hand, violence really rarely does solve things. Normally, brute force is not the way you get things done. Occasionally, it happens. At the same time, frankly, there are people you just can't save. Like, it doesn't mean you have to kill them, right? Like, in the context of this book, it did. But, like, if you apply it as a real-life thing, the deal is, like, as long as there's one person willing to commit violence, violence is probably going to spread. I think that's just an unfortunate, factor of human life is, yeah, if we could all agree to beat our swords into plowshares and all do it, that would be fine. But as soon as one person kind of starts exploiting that system, the reactionary chain of it's going to spread. And that's true on personal levels and, societal levels too, I think. At least I think that now. Ask me again in 5 years and my answer is that might have changed, you know what I mean? But that's kind of what we were looking at Strode. And, by the time Legacy rolls around, Luther is a different guy. He's, there's a time jump between each of the books. So it's 5 years in our time after the first one, but 10 years of story time. So he's had 10 years to, think about it and become a youngish adult and look at what he did. And he's come to the conclusion that, if he lets these people kill him, that is worse than killing them. But killing them is not what he wants to do. Like, it's just that this is a situation that's kind of untenable. And even though he's accepted the necessity of it, he doesn't have to be happy about it, and he isn't. And that's kind of part of his ethical core, is that he is genuinely and sincerely trying and hoping to reason with people that fundamentally probably can't be reasoned with, but he's got to try.
I mean, you pit him against Jack the Ripper and Cain, the first murderer. So yeah, I don't know how much redemption is, but I do like that he at least offers it before he starts kicking some ass.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. There's also a notion of, it doesn't come up in Strode, but the variation of it actually does eventually make it into the Eve Warney series, which is also the idea that there's, I want to say it was maybe Aristotle had said, but it might also have been Plato. Some old-timey guy that probably had a beard. It was basically the idea that, like, habits become the chains that bind us, for good or for ill. We are what we continually do. And there's kind of this notion that if you are like Cain, who has been committed to this really fairly petty evil, it's grandiose evil, but, realistically, one of the themes in Strode that's I think, kind of subtle, considering not a lot of people have mentioned it to me, is that there's a definite, like, rebellion against the father or not, influence in it. In Strange Talent, Luther is very, very much trying to not be his father. In the second one, Mikey the gangster is actually trying to be his father and can't possibly do it. And Cain's deal, his rage against God, can be viewed as, even though Adam would technically have been his father, can also be viewed as kind of a, turning against his father, spiteful kind of thing. And that's kind of my deal with Cain is like, yeah, you're basically seeing the 10,000 year results of a spat. And it's very much a spiteful kind of petty malevolence. Well, when you've been doing stuff for that long, it's going to be real hard to turn course. Like that's kind of mostly why Luther's stuff was kind of doomed to futility. Is that once you've got a couple of millennia of evil behind you, even if you wanted to turn good, you've grounded in those paths in your personality so far that I don't think there's any kind of necessary got to be redemption for you. But I also think that for Luther to be who he is, he has to try.
Yeah. I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up, Justin, but we're based right outside of Washington, D.C., and I feel like in the 4 years that it's been a thing, you've been at every single Awesome Con, and you've always been a very kind of like nice, approachable dude, and I was wondering, we're just coming off the heels of the most recent one. Did you have a good one this past, I guess, week?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I have been at all the Awesome Cons, as a matter of fact. Yes, I enjoyed it. This one was a little slower in terms of actually selling trades and stuff, which I don't know that you can ever infer anything from that because cons are kind of a weird deal. I haven't had a new trade out in several months, so I think that tends to do it. But in terms of sheer enjoyment, this was a very good Awesome Con, and I do very much enjoy them from one year to the next. I like coming to them. I like Awesome Con. I like Baltimore Con a great deal, both of which are relatively close to me, which is nice. But both are still, even though Awesome Con has a pop culture kind of media celebrity presence, it has not overshadowed kind of the comic book aspect of it. And DC has a pretty good comic book community, the DC Baltimore area.
I certainly like to think so.
Yeah. I mean, there was and possibly is the DC conspiracy back in the day, and Monica Gallagher does her Be More into comics, and all that kind of stuff. Third Eye is based in Baltimore, and just in general, that whole area feels like it has a good comic book vibe to me. Lots of zines. Phantom Comic doing its thing to support indie comics and that kind of stuff. So.
That's cool.
So yes, the answer to that was I had a very awesome Con.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's I'm sad to see Luther Strode end, but it really was a hell of a ride. And anytime I read an old like Spider-Man comic or just an older comic in my collection, and I come across one of those muscle-bound ads, it always brings a smile on my face because I think, what if I try really hard, I can cut someone's head in half with my own hand.
Live the dream, man.
That's it.
Live the dream.
Yeah, it's the best. No, really, it's
thank
fantastic.
you. Yeah, I was glad we got to it. Yeah, it is the last volume. We're not. My only caveat to that is we're not against the idea of doing other stuff set in the world. But Luther and Petra's story ends, and I think stories should have an end. I look at television shows, even ones I quite like. My go-to example for this is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I really felt should have ended at the end of season 5. There's just a lifespan for a story and a natural endpoint, and I think when you try to go beyond it, supernatural, you end up with a case of diminishing returns.
So true.
Also should have ended at season 5.
Yeah, and it's not that I haven't kind of liked the additional 7 seasons since then, but like the extent to which they are flailing to make it work. Like, dude, once you've stopped the apocalypse and like got involved with the archangels, like you've pretty much maxed it out, or you should have. Like, it's time to call it a day. Which, in comics we kind of have that luxury. If we were getting paid $1 million a year to, keep making them, maybe we would. But,
Somebody gets paid millions, just not the creators.
Yeah, probably not.
Was it, because obviously there's kind of like a high level of violence both in Spread and Luther Strode. How is it working? And I can only assume in Evil Ernie as well. How is it working, kind of with the DC in the DC sandbox with like New Guardians and Superboy and all that?
That part is not as difficult as you might think. Just because the nature of those stories leads to a different kind of violence. So, like, for instance, right now, I'm working on a comic for Boom called Samba. Actually, also comes out next month. And, it's basically Heart of Darkness or Apocalypse Now set in modern cartel Mexico. A DEA agent is sent in to find a other senior DEA agent, also her father, who has gone batshit crazy in Mexico in his fight against the cartels. And as you might imagine, this goes some very dark places, but the nature of the comic is that while it's not by any means an all ages comic, it's also not a mature reader's comic, right? So, like, it is challenging to write something that is that horrific without also being graphic while not losing the effect that you want to go for. But in mainstream superhero comics, you're not by and large going for that kind of effect. So writing it so that things are, not that bloody and gory is relatively easy. It's harder writing stuff that should be bloody and gory and isn't. So, like, for instance, one of the difficult parts about writing Team 7 was that we couldn't swear when these people are all soldiers who are fighting things that they're wildly overwhelmed with, and honest to God, they should be saying, fuck, shit, damn, hell, fuck, like, that's just the reaction they should be having. Like, that's not how Superboy talks, so that's not an issue, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff is actually fairly challenging for me.
Deathstroke would swear up a storm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he just should be swearing. Like, that's just true.
Well, I remember that issue you did, I think, at Deathstroke, where he fights all the ninjas on a train. Like, that would have been a perfect time for him just to be like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah. And I'd have loved being in that. I love that my entire pitch for that 2 issues was Deathstroke fights 10,000 ninjas. Like,
yeah.
That was the entirety of what I told the editor. He's like, yep.
That was the easiest pitch I think we had. That was like, I think that week when I was working in the comic shop, that was one of those issues was my pick of the week. And they're like, why should I read this? And I was just like, fights ninjas on a train, easy, simple. Fuck shit up.
I wish I had gotten to write more Deathstroke, as a matter of fact. I liked writing Deathstroke, and I felt like I had kind of a good groove with the character.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
The 6 issues I did write of it they ended up all being 2-issue arcs, as you might have noticed, just because I knew nobody had told me, but I can read sales figures, and I'm like, this series is going under, and I don't want to be mid-story when it does. So I wrote them all as stuff that was like, was reasonably confident I would get those 2 issues. But I feel if I had more time to work with, there was stuff that I could have done, and there was stuff we were going to do that didn't make it into the final 2 issues that involved, Rose Wilson and Slade's wife and Jericho and stuff that was actually, I think, really cool. You could see a version of it in what is there, but, like, given more time, Deathstroke in particular is a character that I thought I could have done some really cool stuff with. So I was kind of bummed that I only got to do as much as I did when I got to do it. When the run was already, I'm astonished that you were reading it. So,
I'm easy to please, man. No, but I remember it was a bummer too, because like right when the series ended, like a month or so later, he shows up on Arrow, and then he became like as soon as you put a superhero on like a live action something, then he becomes everyone's favorite superhero, usually for good reason. And I remember it was really bummed that we didn't have that Deathstroke run to kind of back that up. So. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, that is one of my criticisms of DC is that they're getting better at it, but they're not. I don't think that those comics necessarily need to mimic television shows, but certainly there's no particularly good excuse for not having a Supergirl comic coming out right when the Supergirl show starts. Like that's something you should have in the pipeline. Like that's that kind of synergy. I don't know how well it works. But like certainly it does energize the people who are already reading comics to read that particular comic, I think, at least temporarily. So same with Deathstroke. Like I feel like they should have been working a little more coordinated with at least knowing what was going to happen in Arrow, so that they could, kind of keep the series around and, maybe start a new number one when he was there. But I guess you also can't predict what's going to be popular and what's not.
That's true.
Did Team 7 kind of erupt from that? Like, they were like, oh, shit, he's on Arrow, like, basically all of Season 2. Let's create a team book with Slade Wilson.
No, we predated Arrow. It was, Team 7, actually, the original one by Chuck Dixon and Aaron Weissman, I want to say. Might be getting his name wrong. One of my more favorite 90s books. So it was cool to be able to do Team 7. No, they came to me with Team 7. I'm not 100% sure kind of what the genesis of wanting to do it was, other than maybe wanting to do an espionage-y, wild, stormy kind of book. It was unfortunate because I don't think they had a very clear idea of what they wanted the book to be, but they also were not willing to put it entirely in the hands of a writer who had never written a professional comic really before, which is, completely fucking reasonable. But it is one of those deals that I got the impression that they asked me to do this thing. So for the readers who haven't read Team 7, or for the listeners that haven't read Team 7, which I assume is all of them, like, Team 7 was set 5 years prior to the New 52, involving characters that were active in the current New 52, by and large. So we were filling in a history that had just kind of recently happened. It was Amanda Waller and Dinah Lance and Deathstroke and Grifter and, some other characters. And they seemed to lose faith in, like, the high concept of the book before I started writing it, even though it was kind of the one they presented me with. And, there was not a great amount of coordination behind the scenes as to what we could and couldn't do within the 5-year time frame. So it ended up kind of being sort of a flawed experiment in many ways. It's one of the books I look back on that certainly, and there's kind of no way to avoid this. It's kind of the deal of writing comics, right? It's even, no matter how many comics you've written before you start doing it publicly, you are still very much learning the process. And that's certainly true of Big Two books, right? Like writing a work-for-hire book within a shared universe for a major corporation is an entirely different kind of animal than writing your creator-owned books. And it's one that not everybody that does creator-owned books can do. They are related skill sets. If you can write a very good Marvel or DC book, you can probably write a very good creator-owned book, but the reverse is not necessarily true because there's just a separate but related skill set. There's a lot of juggling you have to do that you don't have to do in a creator-owned stuff. So there's no way to get those skills without doing them. The only way to do them is to do those comics for the Big Two and to get published. So essentially, you end up, presenting your learning curve for the world to see. So I look back at really the first two professional books that I did were 2 issues of Hack Slash, which actually I'm still quite fond of. But after that, I went kind of immediately into Team 7 and then Shadow Man for Valiant. And while I like both of those runs, certainly writer me now can't see anything but the rookie mistakes that he made. And a lot of those mistakes were born out of me adapting to the demands of writing for work for hire. And it's just stuff I could do better now. It's sort of frustrating to look back and you're like, yeah, these are characters I could do something with and do it much better now. And just you don't really usually get the chance, and nor probably should you. It's not probably a good idea to go backwards, but I can't help but be wistful. I can see what those books could have been. I don't think either of them is terrible, but there's a much better version of them that I can see when I look at them.
I can only imagine what it would be like to write a big a book that crosses over like Godhead and that sort of thing. Godhead was actually not so bad. Mostly by the time that I wrote Godhead, or was writing the parts of Godhead that I wrote, I had a lot more experience doing that particular job. And in the particular case of Godhead, we were able to basically plan that event entirely on our own, and we were all friends who had all been working together on those books for a while. So that actually came together fairly well. But yeah, man, making crossovers work, it's
epically hard anyhow. Having said all that, it's just amazing that it's ever worked.
Just so many moving pieces and everything. Everyone's got their own stories, and it's like, how are we going to fit this jigsaw puzzle together?
Indeed.
Now, something we ask every person that comes on the show, Justin, what are you currently geeking out over?
Oh, gosh, what am I geeking out over? I think right now my favorite geek out of choice is Monstrous. The Marjorie Liu, I can't remember the artist's name, which is terrible. But anyhow, image book, very, very amazing world building, very luscious art. There's not any comic out there that's like it. I think that's probably my main form of geekery right now. That and, probably Game of Thrones, which is, put the pedal to the metal in terms of the plot. Since they've overtaken George R.R. Martin, they seem to have just got the cinder block on the accelerator.
Just damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead.
Indeed.
Well, let's see. Again, the 14th issue of Spread, which continues the third story arc. Really kicks off the third story arc since you got the 2 interlude origin issues. And the third and, I guess, final volume of Luther Strode, shucks, comes out Wednesday, July 6th. Justin, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Anytime. Also joining us, we've got Trad Moore. He's been the artist on Luther Strode since the beginning. He's also drawn the all-new Ghost Rider, which I know holds a special place in your heart, Jake.
That's true, it does.
He's done so many awesome variant covers. There was I think Trad, didn't you do a bit of promo art for, was it Marvel vs. Capcom 3?
I did, yeah. That one was Udon. Does a lot of the brings a lot of Capcom art books and stuff over to North America, and they were doing a Marvel vs. Capcom art book back in, I think, 2012, and I got to do some promo art for that, which was really exciting.
Oh, there you have it. And Trad, there you are. Well, welcome aboard.
Yeah.
Welcome on.
Hi.
So, here we are 5 years after the first issue of Luther Strode hit, and here it is at the end. How does it's got to be surreal looking back now at the, kind of, I guess the last issue's been in the can for at least a couple months. So how does it all feel?
It feels great to me. Yeah, it was my first book that I ever worked on professionally. So it is a bizarre feeling for sure to finally be done with something that I've been working on, fairly consistently for 5 or 6 years now. Exciting. I didn't really feel complete until it released, but then once last month when the final issue released, I kind of got that bittersweet feeling for sure.
How did you kind of link up with Justin to begin with when you were working on Strange Talent?
It was funny. I was in college. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and I was going into my senior year there, and Justin, he had been doing pitches and whatnot, publishing comics online, and he found my artwork online on DeviantArt and reached out to me, through the kind of baseline pitch of Luther Strode to me, and I really enjoyed it, and I actually put together the pitch with him my senior year of college, and then pitched it immediately upon graduating, and it was one of those amazing situations where it got picked up pretty much right away, and graduated and jumped right into drawing Luther Strode, and that's been my trajectory ever since then.
Now, looking at your art, it has a very kind of kinetic style. It's a very much anime influence. What were some of your kind of artistic influences going into developing the look of Luther Strode?
Yeah, you nailed it. With definitely grew up watching a lot of anime, playing a lot of video games, a lot of Japanese video games. I wasn't in developing Luther Strode, I wasn't trying to put anything specific in there, trying to alter my style because we were creating this property, I could kind of use anything that had been inspiring me up to that point in my life. But I feel like definitely my artwork wouldn't be what it is without stuff like Dragon Ball Z or Final Fantasy, movie-wise, The Matrix, and on a comic side of things, I just grew up pretty much reading everything X-Men. So, pretty much any artist through the 90s and 2000s who made a name for themselves has worked on X-Men at some point. So I was pulling stuff from everybody.
Basically the guys that started Image, which has got to be wild.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it ended up working out pretty well. Yeah, the whole Image crew, 6 or 7 who started it all, I definitely grew up loving all of their artwork for sure.
I got to know, what's your favorite story arc in Dragon Ball Z?
Oh man, that's so hard.
Because I grew up watching that, like on Toonami and everything.
Yeah, for sure. Gosh, I would probably say the Frieza saga.
Oh wow, okay.
Because that was the one where we got to see Goku go Super Saiyan for the first time, which was, still is just one of my favorite moments in serialized fiction. I remember seeing that in middle school and it just being the coolest thing I'd ever seen. But yeah, hard to choose between those, but I made it sound easy, I think.
I was always more of a Cell guy myself.
Cell was awesome. Yeah, that one was great. That one, I guess it went straight from the Android saga into Cell, and the Android stuff wasn't my favorite, but the second Cell showed up, I was like, all right, I'm into this. I can get into this.
Yeah, it kind of had more of a horror bent than just like kind of rip off Terminator.
Yeah, it did. Even the soundtrack kind of got like, had that like sci-fi horror-y sound. Yeah, and that was a great one.
Yeah, and of course, Future Trunks. I mean,
oh yeah, he's got a sword
in the
and he shoots lasers. Like what's better than that?
Yeah, Super Saiyan with a sword, sold.
Yeah, that is great.
Now, how did Jake is a huge fan of the all new Ghost Rider.
That's right.
How did that run? Creating
Robbie Reyes.
Robbie Reyes, yeah, with the Mustang or the hot rod. How did that all kind of come about?
That was it really came out of nowhere. It was in between. I had just finished the Legend of Luther Strode, and I got hit up by Mark Paniccia, editor over at Marvel, and I had known him from earlier in my career. I had shown him my work and stuff, but stuff hadn't worked out. But he reached out again and asked if I was interested in Ghost Rider, and he didn't really give me that much more information. So right then and there, I kind of was like, not very interested, talk to you later type thing. But he was like, no, we're doing a completely new take on him, and he introduced me to Felipe Smith's work, who wrote the All New Ghost Rider series, and he's a fantastic artist and writer himself. So I read some of Felipe's stuff, and I was sold from there. I was like, okay, if I'm working with Felipe Smith and we get to create this character from scratch, it seemed like a really fun and cool opportunity, to grew up loving Marvel Comics, but I also like having the opportunity to create new things, so that was the best of both worlds right there. And from there Robbie was largely, on the story side, Felipe's creation, and then he and I kind of threw the ball back and forth on creating his look. But yeah, it was a great experience. I learned a lot from working with Felipe.
Yeah, and props to you guys, because you guys really, created this great, fresh new character and added so much to the Ghost Rider mythology. It's been around for 30 plus years, and it's and your art lends so well to that super kind of fast paced, flames and heavy metal thing. I remember when I think I saw the first promo in one of the previews books for the all new Ghost Rider. It was just, and I was already just a huge fan of yours from the Luther Strode stuff, and I love Ghost Rider, so it was just the perfect marriage of it, and just the little things his jacket kind of had the Johnny Blaze kind of look to it, which I thought was such a nice little nod to him. And that first issue, like I'm still in awe of how good the whole run was great, but that first issue, I was working at a comic shop at the time when it came out, and Corey Murphy, who works for Image and is friends with us, and is actually she introduced us to you like way back when at Baltimore Comic Con.
Yeah.
Which kind of started this whole thing inadvertently, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, there's kind of a nice symmetry to it all.
Yeah, but I remember she like texted me and she's like, "Have you read All New Ghost Rider yet?" And I was like, "Have I read All New Ghost Rider yet?" And the next day, we have a little staff pick, or staff Rex, and we all just had Ghost Rider out, and we were just like, buy this book, and going crazy.
Well, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it was
that
fantastic.
first issue is a special one for me. Being my first Marvel, full-length Marvel comic, and creating a new character, like you were saying, and introducing Robbie into the Marvel universe, and that's one that I ended up keeping all of the original artwork myself, just for just sentimental purposes, so
Sure.
I when that came out and people enjoyed it, I was really thrilled with that, because we kind of had no idea what people were going to think, because we felt that it was very Ghost Rider, and that it fit very much into the mythology of Ghost Rider, and we certainly did as much research as we could, because we wanted it to. We knew it was going to be harder to get the old school Ghost Rider fans on board than to get new people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll be honest, until the day that thing came out, I had no idea what the reaction was going to be. So yeah, it was a really, really cool moment, really exciting part of my career thus far, for sure.
And another cool thing is, like you were saying, like Felipe Smith is like a fantastic artist in his own right.
Oh yeah.
How cool was that to be able to work with like another like-minded individual like that? Because he did a couple great variants, and then ended up doing, I think the last two issues, the interiors as well. What was it like working with another great artist? Creating this character?
I had never had that experience before. It was great. The way we could communicate with one another was just different than I could with writers and editors that I'd worked with before, because, for example, when we were designing Robbie, he had he sent me his initial sketches, which were, very fleshed out and pretty much ready to go, but I needed to make sure that I wasn't just emulating him, so I then, I would do a sketch, and, it was a nice push and pull between the two of us, because we basically would do a version, and then instead of kind of responding in words to one another, we would just, he would essentially redraw my version, but add maybe a little detail or flair here, and then I would redraw that, so it was I'd never experienced anything like that before. And also to, be working on pages and have him be able to show me exactly what he's looking for when he wanted something to be different,
Mm-hmm.
but also he understood the importance of giving an artist freedom on pages and on scenes, so it would get to a racing scene or a fight scene, like for example, there's like three or four pages of just pure racing in the first issue of Ghost Rider, of All New Ghost Rider, and that one he just said, 2 or 3, 4 pages of racing, go at it, Trad. So having his trust in me and knowing that if there was something specific he wanted, he could show me, and if there was and when there were opportunities to let me do my thing, he let me do my thing. So it was a great experience. For definitely one of the best ones I've had in comics.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm, perfect marriage for a Ghost Rider book. Absolutely.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and Ghost Rider, I felt like at that time I felt very free on that book, because they really reached out to us and said, like, we want something new. We want y'all to be as out there, as crazy as you want to be. And I felt like for them to reach out to Felipe Smith and myself about that, I was like, man, they really are reaching out and trying something different here. This is going to be crazy.
Yeah, that was the cool thing, was seeing people who had never read a Ghost Rider book ever, like eagerly waiting for issue 2 to come out. You know, when it was, and seeing like that kind of shift, and people going, "What are good Ghost Rider books to read?" You know, previous to this, you know, and wanting to check out the Johnny Blaze and Danny Ketch stuff, and so you guys did good, not just for Robbie Reyes, but for for the early Ghost Rider stuff as well.
And not to mention, like, how do you Ghost Rider just visually and conceptually is just one of the coolest fucking characters in comic books.
Yeah.
How do you take
the pull to the character?
Yeah, like, how do you make a flaming skeleton wearing leather and chains cooler than riding a motorcycle? You put him in a hot rod.
Put him in a hot rod, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was I was definitely, when they pitched it to me, I was like, well, I can pretty much not mess up here again, because you got a flaming skull and you have fast cars, and I was pretty much, as long as I stayed to that baseline aesthetic, it was going to be cool no matter what.
Yeah. And then, like, also just like the emotional core too. Like, it's all well and good to be like super badass and heavy metal and flames and fire and all that kind of stuff, but that thing that I wasn't quite expecting in the Ghost Rider story, which was so great to see, was, you know, the relationship with his brother, and like that play out over, you know, those issues. It's just, like I said, just even the first issue, like, and also I think I tweeted you like a long time ago when the first issue came out. I'm pretty sure, is there an Ultraman reference in there? Isn't his brother playing with like a little Ultraman toy?
Yeah, he is. Ultraman is one of my Ultraman and Godzilla were two of my favorite things from
That's perfect.
A very young age. I think that was probably my first introduction into, you know, that whole the whole world of Japanese movies and stuff. So yeah, basically half of my drawings, I feel like, are some sort of extrapolation of Ultraman. So anytime I can throw something Ultraman in there, I try to.
Yeah,
is your favorite kaiju Jet Jaguar?
No, I mean, I it's hard for me to. I know it's very plain, but I can't help but. I mean, Godzilla is just the best.
He's the king of monsters, man.
He is. He's
the king for a reason.
Superman of giant monsters.
I remember I was like half joking when I was like thinking of this when the 2014 Godzilla came out. I was like, this is the perfect time to like reboot Ultraman. Like, you know,
I thought the same. I keep waiting for them to do, for someone out there to do like a full out reboot of Ultraman. I got my fingers crossed.
There's that manga series going on right now,
which
is really cool.
It is. Yeah, I love the design in that. It's really cool.
Yeah, picking up where the original series left off, and you know, the sun taking over. It's really kind of cool.
Yeah. I was also with the, like you said, with the Godzilla movie coming out, and then now with them like revamping Power Rangers all over the place, I'm just thinking, come on, Ultraman, you're next. You can do it.
It's only a matter of time till we get the post-credit scene for the next Godzilla movie where he just shows up.
Where he fights Ultraman.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, next year we've got a new Mega Man cartoon.
Ultraman, it's only a matter of time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. I read about that and I forgot to watch anything about it, but I'm always up for anything Mega Man as well.
You had mentioned kind of working with Udon on the promo artwork for their Marvel vs. Capcom stuff. Were you a big Capcom guy? You know, Mega Man certainly, and
absolutely, yeah. Growing up, Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom. All sorts of Capcom stuff. I would say a lot of the, one, just enjoying playing the games, of course, but even, as an artist, like a lot of the character design work and stuff from Street Fighter games and from Marvel vs. Capcom and stuff like that are some of my biggest influences. The artwork, the character artwork for Street Fighter 3 Third Strike is, to this day, some of my favorite character artwork in anything. So Capcom was hugely influential to me. Just in terms of things that I like in general, but also specifically as an artist.
I guess now that you mention it, the guys from Street Fighter 3 kind of look like Luther Strode characters.
Yeah,
like they're like
I'm glad. Alex from Street Fighter 3 is if you look at Alex from Street Fighter 3 and you look at Legacy of Luther Strode, version of Luther Strode, you will see a very distinct line between one character to the other, for sure.
Well, even some of the bad guys, I suppose, like
Yep.
Urien and I guess Hugo, or
Yep.
there's kind of that look that it's all starting to make sense now.
It's all coming
Yep.
together.
And you with the Legacy of Luther Strode, I pretty much, with Luther, I was thinking, what if you put Alex essentially in Ryu's costume, but then also in the last issue of the Legacy of Luther Strode, no spoilers, but he gets completely covered. His clothes get completely covered in blood. So then he switches from the Ryu outfit into the Ken outfit. So I got to have a lot of. That was one of my things in designing the characters for the Legacy of Luther Strode. I was very specifically looking at the artist. I'm probably going to butcher his name, but his name is Daigo Aikino, and he was the artist who did the Street Fighter Third Strike stuff. He also did design work for Devil May Cry and Onimusha and all sorts of awesome Capcom games. And yeah, he's a favorite of mine. So I was digging into his work a lot in preparation for various Luther Strode stuff.
Did you try to convince Justin to let you slip in a dragon punch against Kane?
Yeah, no, I always try. I never. I'm always careful about not wanting to go too specific with ripping people off, but I try to vaguely rip people off as often as I can, and throw shout outs in there to various character moves from video games and stuff like that.
Yeah, him screaming "Sonic Boom" was maybe
Yeah,
a bit
that
too
would have
much.
been a little too much.
Well, it's funny because speaking of like influence and stuff, I remember the way Corey got me into the first volume of Luther Strode. She was like, "You like Casey Jones? This is like Jack Casey Jones killing everybody," and I was like, sold. Yeah. And I if this is either just a dream I had or you really drew this, but I'm pretty sure at one of the cons we were at your table talking to you once. Did you draw like a Luther Strode Casey Jones?
I did. And it's funny. You're finding anyone who listens to this is going to be able to completely deconstruct all of my artwork because we really are landing on all my favorite stuff in this interview. Casey Jones was I actually was worried after designing Luther Strode that the second people saw him that they were going to just think that I had ripped off Casey Jones.
No, that's what got me into it.
I was about to say. I was like, well, they'll either do like me and like it because it looks like Casey Jones mixed with Michael Myers from Halloween.
Yeah.
Because I mean, pretty much that is exactly what Luther Strode is, mixed between those two characters. But yeah, no, that was a direct influence there. And yeah, someone else had put two and two together with that. And he was a guy who I had met at a couple of shows, just a really nice guy, and he wanted to commission me to do something cool that he thought I'd like, and he brought up the idea of Casey Jones and Luther Strode together, and I was like, "Yep, I'm excited for this commission." So that is how that one came together.
That's perfect.
Jake, didn't you kind of have a dream commission for Trad?
Oh yeah, I was like, because I can't draw to save my life, and so I'm always coming up with ideas like, oh, I would love to draw like He-Man picking up Thor's hammer, or all these like crazy ideas. And I think I tweeted again. I'm going to sound like a crazy stalker, but I tweeted you. I tweeted you once, and I was like, if you ever have the time, and if I ever have the money, like my dream commission would be the Hulk and Black Bolt sitting at a pizzeria, and Black Bolt is sneezing, and he's blowing Bruce Banner out of the back of the Hulk. And I was like,
I actually remember you sending.
Do you really?
I really do, because that's a really strong visual image. Yeah, no, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Like I said, if only I could draw, because then it just the idea of them being at a pizzeria is what sells it for me. Because I was
about to say even just that is a good commission in and of itself. But then add the sneeze, and that's what takes it to A+ level.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
Adds a little too much pepper.
Yeah. Black Bolt's not super familiar with like Earth food, I guess.
Who knows? They're all on Earth now.
That's true. Yeah, they're all on Earth now.
So is this? I mean, obviously Justin kind of said as much, but I mean, I gotta get a second opinion. Is this really it for Luther Strode? Was Legacy going to always be the end?
Legacy was always going to be the end. The story, we didn't have it set in stone from day one, but we did have the basically overall character arc of Luther. We knew where we wanted. We knew we wanted to do 3 volumes. We knew the names of them. We knew more or less where we wanted the characters to end up. I don't want to be too spoilery here in trying to promote the series, but yeah, there was a lot of decisions that we made, on, as we were developing the book that we didn't know from the beginning. But yeah, we knew we wanted to have a cohesive, finished book that we weren't just kind of noodling with on and off for 20 years. So yeah, I think that it definitely came together very closely to how I had envisioned it in my head. Justin is definitely firmly set on it being the last thing. I'm more apprehensive about saying that because I feel like creators always say that and then they always come back like 20 years later, where like Tron 2 will come out way after, so who knows? Right now it is very done, and if we never touch it again, I'm happy with it. But yeah, I guess that's where I'll leave it.
Well, now that the project's done, what do you have lined up next?
That is also something that I wish I could speak more on. I can say in a very teasery way that I have a creator-owned project coming up with a collaborator, writer who I like very much, both creatively and personally. And I also have a big 2 superhero issue that I'm working on that I'm excited to share with people, but I'm not entirely sure when I'm allowed to go into detail there. So we'll leave it at that. I'm doing stuff both independent and superhero mainstream, trying to stay relevant, stay in people's in people's vision, so yeah, that's where I'm at right now. That was a very vague, meandering response, but hopefully it teases something.
No, yeah, that's exciting. Like you said, keeping it in the creator-owned stuff, and then anything with the big 2.
Crossing the streams, man.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
And you seem to like how much fun is doing the covers or variant covers like that. You seem to be having a lot of fun, and they're really kind of fun and interesting stuff.
Oh, I love it. That's my thing, and that's why I feel like, at least for the time being, I'm going to stick predominantly to doing, full issues of creator-owned work. Mm-hmm. But I get to get all of my, fun kicks out of doing these covers. I get to draw all these characters that I love and, all sorts of different properties working for different companies. I'm doing this like Transformers G.I. Joe crossover thing for IDW right now, doing covers for that. It's called Revolution. So, and on top of that, I'm also drawing Marvel covers for Vote Loki and, variants for whatever comes my way. So yeah, I get, it's a lot of great opportunities coming at me, and I couldn't be happier with the things that come my way. But yeah, when it comes to interior work, I like being able to work on projects that wouldn't exist without me. You know what I mean? If I never drew Spider-Man in my life, Spider-Man's still going to outlive us all. Whereas Luther Strode would have never existed how it is, if Justin and I had not gotten together and created it. So that's the fun part about creator-owned stuff. You're kind of adding your own thoughts into, the mythology of comics and science fiction and, entertainment at large. So yeah, it's fun jumping back and forth between the two, and I hope to continue doing that for as long as I can.
I think that's why Brad Bird turned down The Force Awakens to do Tomorrowland, because he was like, look, even if I don't do Star Wars, someone's going to do Star Wars.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And then he did Tomorrowland, which was maybe not the best movie I saw last year. I mean, it wasn't the worst movie I saw last year, which would still probably be, what, Bridge of Spies? Or maybe Black Mass, I don't know.
Those are disappointing.
Yeah.
I didn't see Tomorrowland. I'm a big fan of Brad Bird, but that one didn't quite draw me the way his previous stuff has. Yeah, and after that, the general response seems to be what y'all are saying. So I'm kind of like, I'll just go watch Iron Giant again.
Oh yeah, Iron Giant.
The Incredibles.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Iron Giant. I always like. It's not even a joke, but like for me, like Iron Giant is like the best Superman movie ever made.
Oh, for sure. And that one, gosh, that's just one of my favorite animated movies ever. That one just gets you every time.
Every time.
Up and away.
Yeah.
So, what are you currently geeking out over? I mean,
What am I geeking out over? Let me think. I have been playing. This is where I don't have as much time to play video games anymore, but I still love playing video games. And I've been playing Metal Gear Solid 5 since I bought it in September of last year. So I'm still geeking out over that game. I just love Metal Gear Solid. I'm always geeking out over the artwork of James Herron. You know, his work on Rumble right now is just the coolest stuff out there to me. He's just, there's no one else like him. Working in comics, or I feel like working in any artistic field. Let me think if there's anything else. I'm really excited for E3 stuff. I'm probably going to finish this interview and go watch the Sony press conference. So I'm kind of geeking out about that right now. So I don't know what else could I be geeking out about. Did I touch all the bases?
you got the big
Did
guns.
you see Civil War?
I did. I loved Civil War.
Yeah.
That was great. I was freaking out. I knew, of course, everyone knew Spider-Man was going to be in it, but I stayed as far away as I could from trailers and whatnot and promo images as best as I could. So when I saw that in theater, I actually got to see it the weekend of Free Comic Book Day.
Oh, nice.
So I went with a bunch of fellow comic artists and fans and stuff, and it was a super cool experience. And seeing, I mean, even though I've already seen Spider-Man on screen, like, 5-6 times now, it's still cool seeing every new. It's like every time they cast a new James Bond, you're just excited to see how they're gonna fill the shoes of the people that came before them. So yeah, seeing that, I was pumped about that. And speaking of Ultraman, when spoilers, when Ant-Man turned into Giant Man, I got a hardcore Ultraman vibe from that. We actually talked about it after the movie because one of the guys who I went and saw it with was a fellow indie artist friend of mine, Andrew McLean, who draws Headlopper.
Oh yeah.
Which is another book that I've been geeking out about. That's one of my favorite comics out there right now. And the final issue, I believe, gosh, it either comes out this week or next. But yeah, he loves, old Japanese monster movies and stuff too. And he and I both were talking about how much of an Ultraman vibe that Giant Man part gave us. So that was great.
Well, yeah, I remember just touching back on your DeviantArt page, which if you guys haven't checked it out, check it out. It's got some amazing, cool stuff on it. And you get to also see your evolution on there, too.
Also check out his Cadence Comic Art page.
Yeah. The main place I post now is my Tumblr.
Okay,
I haven't updated my DeviantArt in quite a while, but it is kind of cool to be able to look at the gallery there because I've had it since I was like in high school.
Yeah.
I've deleted a lot of the embarrassingly terrible stuff from there, but it is. I tried to keep enough on there to where you could really look how much how much an artist changes over years.
Yeah, that was cool, and that was where I saw that Ultraman piece you did. that like I hadn't thought about Ultraman in like years.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I saw that piece, and it just like all came rushing back. I was like, oh my god, I remember watching this as a kid, and that design and that character and stuff. That was so cool.
Thanks. Yeah, no, that one, gosh, that was, I think that one actually went up before I even was a professionally published
Oh really? Wow.
artist. Yeah, that was back when I was doing like sketch blogs and stuff to try to get my artwork and my name out there.
Nice.
We had Jim Zub on the show who writes some of the Street Fighter comics for Udon. This is another one of those questions, kind of like favorite kaiju, that I feel like everybody has a different answer to.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite Street Fighter character in all of Street Fighterdom?
Man, this is going to go right along with my somewhat boring answer in saying Godzilla, but I'm a sucker for just really strong, great main characters, and Ryu is just, he's my dude in Street Fighter. So yeah, I went through phases growing up where different characters would be the most interesting to me. I guess this would be a more interesting story. The first time I ever saw Street Fighter was in a pizza place. There's a pizza chain. I don't know if it's up north and stuff, but down in the southeast, it's called Mellow Mushroom, and
we
they
got one of those,
used to have arcade things in there, arcade whatever they're called, arcade machines.
Cabinets,
And I remember looking across the place, and me and my brother saw this game, Street Fighter 2, and we were like, "What is that?" And I remember seeing Vega and Blanca, and I thought they were the coolest things I'd ever seen in my life. And they will always be two character designs that always, stick with me. Just because when I first glanced, and we didn't even play the game, we didn't put any quarters in. I was probably like, I don't even know, 4 or 5 years old, so I probably would have lost within literal seconds of putting in the quarter.
It was a hard game,
but yeah, we just were watching the little test matches that they play.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember just wanting to draw Vega and wanting to, get a mask like Vega. So he's definitely one of my favorites of the series as well.
Yeah, I still have that same kind of thing where like if the character looks cool, he'll probably be my favorite character.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And it's like why I love Moon Knight, but like Moon Knight's also awesome, but Vega's the same kind of thing. Like I remember seeing Vega as a kid, and I was like, he's got like claws and
one hand though.
yeah, and an awesome mask, and he's like with the rose and
he
like
can
this
climb
whole,
walls.
Yeah.
He would jump around and make funny noises and stuff.
He's like a sexy child of Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, he really is. He's got something about those like cool simple masks. We already touched upon on Casey Jones, but Jason Voorhees, Casey Jones, Vega, they all have that iconic mask to them.
Even Skullomania in the Street Fighter EX game.
Skullomania, yeah, his design's great. I love that. I wish they would have at some point brought him over. I would have loved to seen him in like 2D animation, but I guess that's never gonna.
It's a licensing thing. That's why they had to create.
Oh, okay.
Because the Street Fighter EX games were published. They were published by Capcom, but they were developed by a third party for the. That's why it doesn't quite feel the same. Like
yeah, no, because those games got pretty bizarre later on in the EX series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I remember being like, "This is." I mean, I was fine with it not feeling, like Street Fighter, so to speak, but it that makes a lot more sense that it was completely developed by a different group.
Yeah, so when they're developing like Super Street Fighter 4, they were like, who is really cool? That D Dark character from Street Fighter EX.
Yeah.
But we can't use him. So let's create another Turkish oil wrestler and let's call him Hakan.
Yeah. Turkish oil wrestler. Well, because wasn't Cody? Didn't he start?
Well, Cody started out as a Final Fight character.
Oh yeah, so they've brought him all over the place. I knew that there was more, that he had jumped around in various series before.
Wasn't also M. Bison originally called Vega?
Yeah, Vega, Balrog, and M. Bison. Their names were all switched around because they didn't want to get into legal deals because M. Bison, was originally Balrog's name. Because Balrog was based on Mike Tyson.
That's right. Yeah.
So they had to kind of like switch the three bad guys' names around. And it's weird thinking that because, when you hear M. Bison, you just think of what we in America know of as M. Bison. And anytime I watch
Raul Julia.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I always think of the line from the Street Fighter movie, and it's like, we're going to kick his ass so hard that the next M. Bison will feel it.
So good.
But then again, that was most of my exposure to the game anyway, because I never really played it.
Whoa, Street Fighter, the movie, the game for the Sega
game,
Saturn.
Yes. I'm not ashamed to admit that I had that game.
Did you also have Revolution X where you save Aerosmith?
You know what? I did.
Yes.
I'm not even kidding right now. I had some ridiculous games back in the PlayStation era.
It's all right. I own the Street Fighter movie on both DVD and Laserdisc. So
there you go. On Laserdisc,
yeah.
That is.
Oh yeah, no, I have a whole side podcast on our network devoted to my devotion to Laserdiscs.
It's called Laserdiscs.
No, I love that. The fun thing about certain eras of a person's life, and for me it was that PlayStation time period. I was in elementary school, and it's not that you don't like good things, it's that you can't tell the difference between good things and bad things. Mm-hmm. So it's like you could you could go to at the time Blockbuster and go to rent a game, and you could be like, man, I'm going to get Final Fantasy VII and Revolution X because they're both awesome, and like no one could, you couldn't really define what was or wasn't good, or I certainly couldn't. Yeah. Same way with music and comics and all that stuff. But it is fun looking back at some of the stuff that I thought was really cool and going like, ooh, I want to leave that in my past.
So that's why I own Echo the Dolphin.
Exactly.
I'd
say that I did not own Echo the Dolphin.
I own that on Game Gear, and my Game Gear still somehow works, but I have to hold it a certain way and have it plugged into the wall. And if I want to be able to hear anything, I have to have headphones in. But I bought Judge Dredd on eBay for like $1.
Hey, there you go.
Solid game on Game Gear.
I own Shaq Fu on the Super Nintendo.
You went out of your way to buy that recently, right?
Game.
We have which game?
I had, speaking of Sega Game Gear, I had, remember the movie Surf Ninjas?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had the Surf Ninjas game on Game Gear.
Where you could control ninjas from...
I mean, you might as well, yeah, with surfboards. The two coolest things.
Oh, man.
Just throw in rollerblades and you've got it all covered.
Yeah, exactly. Pure 90s.
Well... I don't know if we can top that.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah. Well, the Legacy of Luther Strode gets collected by Image Comics, out everywhere in comic shops and on Comixology on Wednesday, July 6th, and in bookstores the following Tuesday. Trad, thanks for coming on the show. Looking forward to seeing what you got up your sleeve with these secret projects.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to sharing that stuff with everyone when I can.
Excellent.
Cool. Well, you got the email, man.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
All right. Lovely gentleman.
Oh, yeah.
Lovely gentleman.
It was one of my favorites.
Not to mention how many... Maybe that's the secret to have a good interview. We need to mention Revolution X with Aerosmith.
It's had a flawless record so far. One, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the first time we bring up...
Best way to make a perfect record.
Yeah. Maybe we should just never mention Revolution X with Aerosmith so we never tarnish that.
Probably for the best.
Yeah. I was more familiar with the Sega Saturn version myself. But,
I only knew it as an arcade game.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, so definitely check out Legacy of Luther Strode. It's out available in comic shops everywhere and on Comixology now, along with the rest of the trilogy. We just put out the book review for that yesterday, so you can certainly think what we specifically think of Luther Strode as a whole, because we talk about the entire trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It was cool deconstructing Trad's artwork too.
Yeah, I mean,
inadvertently.
He's really just one of the best. I mean, like it's not every day that you get to talk to one of your favorite artists of all time.
Yeah, now you know how I felt when we talked to Tim Seeley.
Yeah,
I mean, he not artist.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
for us too.
That's true.
But a nice guy that like Sam said, we had talked to briefly before at Baltimore Comic Con. And a guy close in our age, but just
He's about yeah.
killing it and just his art's getting better and better and better, and his art already started off great, you know. So that was a really special interview and really a lot of fun to talk to both those guys about, like Sam was saying, a book that really got me into Image Comics and helped me get right back into comics in general. So that was
which is
a
the
lot
highest
of fun.
compliment to Messrs. Jordan and Moore.
Indeed.
So what you guys been up to?
Well, I continuing on listening to books on Audible from last week. Since I finished Armada, I am now listening, or I just started listening 2001 Space Odyssey, the book that was written by Arthur C. Clarke, who co-wrote the script for the movie 2001 A Space Odyssey. And the best I can figure, and I think I read this somewhere too, but Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick wrote essentially the first draft of the script and then parted ways, and Stanley Kubrick continued to make the movie, and Arthur C. Clarke wrote this book, and they both basically had the same story, but like any book and movie, they divert a lot, but they
like a lot of Kubrick. It's very just kind of you see what you see on the screen. There's not a lot of backstory.
Yeah, whereas the book, there's several chapters that are from the perspective of the monolith and from Hal's perspective, which I thought was really cool because while
I remember seeing you like Facebook about that, you're like, ooh.
Yeah. No. While I love 2001 because it in my mind, just like Interstellar, it is a visual masterpiece, and it's very exciting. Like
feast for the eyes.
Yeah, and it's very exciting, like space stuff, and whatnot. But both stories kind of lack a little bit in the story department because I think both Chris Nolan and Kubrick were so focused on making beautiful visuals that they kind of let other things drop to the waistline, which is fine because it was such a good final product. Whereas the book, there's no visuals whatsoever, so all it is just story, and you get to you get to hear what the motivations are. I say finally because I finally read it, but like they came out the same year, thereabouts.
Yeah, around 68.
Yeah, so it's been available to everyone the entire time, but like in the book, the monoliths are essentially sentient beings. They're beings of like energy and technology that have just evolved from actual like bio suits or whatever you want to call the body into like artificial life and stuff like that. They've put their consciousness inside of machines and stuff. And they just run around the universe, much like the engineers in Prometheus, just not so much kickstarting life on other planets, but like experimenting, tweaking things here and there, and like just like you see in the prologue of the movie, where the man apes are like go through a sudden evolution where they realize that they can use like bones and stuff like that as weapons. That's what happens during the first hour of the audiobook. It's all with those man apes, and you get to go on this like much longer journey.
How many hours is the audiobook?
The audiobook's only about like 5 or 6 hours. Oh, wow. So technically that's a short book.
Still, that's an inordinate amount of time before they even get to space.
Yeah, well, just like in the movie itself, like I was actually paying attention to it. I was like, it's about 26 minutes before a single line of dialogue is spoken, and then it's I had the benefit of listening or watching it on Laserdisc. It's not until the second side that you even meet Hal, and this is a CLV disc, which listen to one of the most recent episodes of Laserdiscs where we talk about the difference in quality. CLV means that you have about an hour's worth of movie. In this particular case, they chopped it up a little bit. So it's actually around 45 minutes where they do the side flips, but still, it's 45 minutes before you get introduced to Dave and Hal and Frank. Is that the other crew member? Yeah. So, and that's what people remember as like the story is their, journey on the Discovery to Jupiter, which in the book it's to Saturn, by the way. They make a short trip to Jupiter, but they continue going on. But anyway, so it's really fascinating. I just finished it yesterday on my way home from work, and I sat down and watched the movie to kind of celebrate, which was not the best idea because like I started it at 1:00 in the morning and I forgot that it's almost a 3-hour long movie. But luckily I didn't have to work today, so I didn't need to sleep as much. But very fascinating book. If you have the chance to read it or listen to it, I highly recommend it. The audiobook that I listened to specifically was like the one that was recorded around the year 2001 as kind of like a celebration of it. The foreword, I believe, was actually read by Arthur C. Clarke himself. It's definitely written by him, but I'm pretty sure because it was a different voice than who was narrating the book, it was actually Arthur C. Clarke. And it was very touching, like half of it was kind of a love letter to Stanley Kubrick because while Clarke was writing the foreword, he even mentions it in the foreword near the end. He was like, I wrote this, and then 2 weeks later, Stanley Kubrick passed away, and it was like in the year 2000-ish.
He dies during production of AI.
Yeah, and he mentions that in the foreword too, and like mentions that he's like, I think it's going to Steven Spielberg, and I'm like, oh, hey, I know that's true, because I'm in the future. But he, he's like, it's so sad that he passed away before 2001 because we were already talking about, these cool things that we were going to do to celebrate 2001 coming to pass, and doing like, special like re-releases of the movies and, and stuff like that, which I'm sure still happened. I don't think I had even seen 2001 back in 2001. But it's one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah. 2001 is a huge influence on, just really that and Star Trek are like what get me going on science fiction.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then I saw Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates yesterday,
which is a completely different thing.
It is. It's not sci-fi at all, but it's got a couple of my favorite actors in it. I'll see virtually anything with Anna Kendrick in it, which reminds me of
Zac Efron.
Or Zac Efron, which reminds me I still haven't seen Up in the Air or Neighbors 2.
Did you see Mr. Right?
I started
I see
it.
Mr.
I haven't
Right?
finished it.
I can't remember if I have seen
Max
it.
Landis helmed or written.
Written.
Yeah, written. It's
That's right. No, I still
he
haven't
directed
seen that.
me, him, her.
That's right.
Yeah.
Up in the Air, dude.
Yeah.
It's one of my
That's
favorites.
fucking
Yeah,
great.
Jason Reitman. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's great.
But yeah, and then what is it? Is it Adam Devine?
Yes.
Yeah, and I can never remember his name. Yeah, and then Aubrey Plaza. All four of them, I love them all, and they are all four of them are top marks for the whole movie, and it's hilarious, and you get to see sweet, innocent little Anna Kendrick being like just the grossest like street trash kind of like New York girl that I've ever met, and I lived in New York, as we mentioned earlier in the show. And like transforming herself into this sweet little, mom's perfect image of what a girl should be, just so she can go on this, honeymoon destination, not honeymoon, wedding, and it's just hilarious, and they're doing drugs and making bets and watching gross porn.
So it was pretty funny.
Yeah, hilarious.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's one I feel like I'd check out. Like I'd rent on Vudu
yeah.
when it's out and about.
I can understand that like hesitation of like paying like the movie theater price to see it,
and I do like everyone involved.
It takes me a lot to see a comedy at movie theater price.
Yeah.
I feel you.
I would definitely recommend, if you guys are free for like $5 day or something like that, check it out, because I think it's definitely worth it to see it. I agree, because it's a comedy, and it's not like a super crazy, action comedy or something like that, like Central Intelligence.
Yeah.
I understand.
Or The Nice Guys.
Yeah, I understand not needing to see it like on the movie theater screen.
I think the last time I did that was for Trainwreck, for any comedy, for any straight comedy.
Sisters was really good.
Yeah, and I would say like those all like are in the same vein of like quality of comedy.
Yeah, that's solid. Because I like I like Trainwreck, I like Sisters and stuff. The next movie, that's on my radar since Tarzan, and we talked about that already, is Suicide Squad, I guess.
Not Ghostbusters?
Oh, yeah, I'll see Ghostbusters.
Star Trek Beyond?
I'll see that. But, I'm super psyched for...
I still need to see Finding Story.
Oh yeah.
We still have it at my theater.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
super
still at
psyched
Centerville
for-
too.
I'm sure it's still at a lot of places.
Yeah.
It was
Making some money.
What was it? It did better than Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates last week, and it's in its like fourth week.
I think the only thing that beat it was The Secret Life of Pets this weekend.
Oh, I want to see Captain Fantastic with Aragon. Viggo
Mortensen.
I know his name.
I still need to see Swiss Army Man. We
Yeah, I wanna
unfortunately
see that
didn't
too.
get that at my theater.
I want to see that and Captain Fantastic.
Yeah.
Those are the two I want to see. Those are like very indie-ish films.
Yeah.
But,
I haven't seen an indie flick since
Ex
Sing
Machina?
Street.
Yeah.
Street,
Yeah.
so damn good. It's coming out soon.
19th is when it's available for digital HD.
Yes.
Ooh, and that's when I get my copy of Batman vs Superman
Oh yes,
next week.
Yeah, we
You
can
know,
talk about that after we see it. 'cause,
yeah. I've owned it for like over a week
I've seen it, but we'll hold off until we don't talk about it.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I've been rewatching a bunch of Arnold Schwarzenegger movies because I've been listening to asaudible.com.
Please sponsor us.
I've been listening to Total Recall, the Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's like my unbelievable true life story about Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm on chapter 29 of 69. It's a very long book, very long life story.
That's gonna like
almost
hold
a
you over
chapter
for your month credit.
Yeah, almost a chapter for every age. I think he's 68. But it's, I mean, I always had a general idea.
Turns 70 next year.
Arnold does?
Yep.
Okay, so then it's 69. So then, I had the basic idea of his life story.
Sure.
You know, the immigrant coming over from Austria with like $20 in his pocket and working his ass off to become, you know, really help put bodybuilding on the map and become like the greatest bodybuilder of all time. And then, you know, become, you know, the biggest action star of all time. You know, they don't make Arnold movies like that. You know, they don't make movies like, you know, that anymore. They don't have characters and actors like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, anymore. And just the total unrelenting drive of Arnold Schwarzenegger is astounding and insanely inspiring to me. I remember waking up yesterday, I think it was, or today, whatever, and being like, you know, the amount of struggle and fight that Arnold Schwarzenegger had to do just to get to a country that I was born into, you know, like, and for him to work his ass up to get over here is crazy, you know, and you know, the book is, you know, warts and all, you know, I'm just getting started with this movie career, which is exciting. You know, I'm at Conan the Barbarian, which is pretty great. You know, the chapter title, if I'm not mistaken, is "What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Stronger," because the first thing they shot is the scene where he's running away from the wolves, and then falls down the stone thing and gets the sword. You know, by Crom, and what the director told him was, "Hey, you'll get a head start. Don't worry about it. The dogs won't get you." Because, you know, they were like German shepherds, I think, but they had like wolf in them. And they like sewed like, you know, meat into his like loincloth. And they, don't worry. You'll have plenty of head start. Well, he didn't have enough of a head start and they got him. Oof. And he fell down the rocks 10 feet onto his back and then gashed his leg like on like some thorns and cut him up.
Damn.
And the director looked over, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger's been, you know, he had done a movie called Stay Hungry with what's his face from, why am I blanking on his name, from Tron,
Bruce Boxleiter?
from
Jeff Bridges?
Tron. Jeff Bridges.
Bruce Boxleiter is Tron.
Yeah, well, I mean, from Tron. I feel like Jeff Bridges. Yeah, okay, yes, that was not the name I was expecting. I was like, yeah, I know Sam got me on this, and I was like, Christ, yes, Jeff Bridges. And actually, Arnold Schwarzenegger won a Golden Globe for his performance Stay Hungry, so I bought it off eBay for like $6. I'm excited to watch it. He plays an Austrian bodybuilder. I mean, come on. But
he's method.
That's right. Because he credits that as his first film, not Hercules in New York, because it didn't get released for so long. Because he kind of talks about that movie a little bit in the book. But he, you know, it's his first big starring role, and here he is, all bloody, gashed up, and the director looks over him, and he's just like, "That's what I want. Now you know what this movie's going to be like. You are Conan." And the rest of the movie is like him just like blood, sweat, and tears, you know, on this movie. He gashed his head on like some rocks too. And the director thought it was a makeup job. I was like, that looks so realistic. He's like, it is real. But, you know, I think it just sets him up for, you know, later on in his career with Terminator and everything else. But I just for fun, I just rewatched Kindergarten Cop and Twins. I just felt like watching like comedy Arnold, Ivan Reitman Arnold, and it's been a long time since I've seen Twins.
Yeah, it's the better of the two full on Schwarzenegger comedies. That and the other one being Junior.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, Kindergarten Cop is pretty good too.
Yeah, so is Jingle All the Way.
I love Jingle.
Jingle All the Way is great.
But I mean, like of the Schwarzenegger DeVito teamings.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, yeah. I polled a bunch of my coworkers at work just randomly. At first, they were like, "What the fuck?" And then like it kind of was like funny because I was just like asking everyone what their favorite Schwarzenegger film is. The top film was the first Terminator film, which I thought was kind of interesting. It wasn't T2. That was in second place, of course. But the first Terminator was the most liked Arnold Schwarzenegger film. So yeah, just going through watching the old Arnold films. I haven't watched Predator in a long time, so I'm gonna watch Predator again.
Got that on Voodoo.
Got that on physical DVD.
That's good stuff, man. So
yeah, man.
If you asked me, it would probably be actually. As much as I want to just outright say T2, while I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I don't know, man. I really love, like, I'm gonna curveball you. Like, I really love like Total Recall and The Running Man.
Well, Total
Last
Recall,
Action Hero.
Last Action Hero. Well, Last Action
That's
Hero.
a good one too. I have that on Laserdisc.
We all can agree. Like,
T2 probably wins, but like True Lies takes the number 2 spot.
for me, it's Total Recall because for one Christmas, all I asked for was the VHS copy of Total Recall, and I still have it. And I watched that over and over and over and over again. When he's just like, ha ha ha, ha, you think this is the real Quaid? It is. Yeah, fucking great. See you at the body rig. Anyway,
Get your ass to Mars.
yeah, we could spend all day just quoting random Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. But
I have that on Laserdisc.
But-
Cohagen, give these people air.
the air, get them the air. Yeah, Total Recall is probably number one for me. But Last Action Hero, I think what I love so much about that is like every time I've watched it, and I think the last time I saw it is when you were watching on Laserdisc, Chris. Is I appreciate that movie more and more and more every time I watch it, and the fact that like the
Certainly
three
more
of
than
us,
I did as a kid.
sure, but the three of us, like we're all that kid in
Yeah.
that movie.
Oh,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like we're just
We've made we're not getting paid, but I was about to say we've made a living on being that kid.
yeah.
But
and-
like
and-
if this podcast was bringing in
But I
money,
mean, the farther we get away from that kid's age, and we're only getting farther away, like it makes that movie so much more fun to watch every single time. Like, I definitely need to rewatch The Last Action Hero because it's a movie that I still have the action figures.
Oh, you don't have the golden ticket?
No, I have the action figures.
I used to have a hat that was the golden.
Oh,
the
really?
Golden ticket was on the
Oh.
the face.
For some reason, like my favorite Arnold
I
look.
used to get made fun of for that because, like the teenagers that I knew at that time, because I was on swim team when that movie came out. The older kids on the swim team were like, "Oh, that movie was so dumb." I was like, "I really liked it."
For some reason, my favorite Arnold look when I was a kid was the Last Action Hero look. Just the red shirt, the jeans, and the leather jacket.
Yeah, can't fail.
Yeah.
Rudy
So
can't fail.
that's literally all I've been doing outside of work is just watching Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and reading about his life.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I feel like here's the thing. So not this past Monday, but the Monday before was Independence Day, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why does it feel like Independence Day was so fucking long ago?
Right? Yeah, we were talking about that at dinner. The last episode we recorded on Independence Day, but it feels like it was a month ago.
Yeah. What the fuck?
I don't know. It felt like that too. Like I was
Time slow down or speed up?
I was coming home from work, and I was like, I haven't seen the boys in so long, and I was like, it's only a week. It's always like only ever usually just a week.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be seeing a lot of Sam in the next couple of days, in the next week or two. So like, it's all same thing. That's weird.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's what we
just-
call every July.
It just feels like it was been.
But which one
it
of
had been
you
a
is
long
JoJo?
time.
And which one of us is bizarre?
Also, really, I also rewatched Conan, the first Conan. But remember how fucking ridiculous it is when like the face acting from James Earl Jones when like the orgy's happening, and you just zoom in on his face, and it's like turns into a snake, and he just like turns and looks. He's like,
It's the most bored James Earl Jones performance.
I also think the coolest Conan looks in that movie is like Commando Conan when he goes in the raid with like
that was my parents'
black and
first
white.
date.
That's right. Yeah.
It's because of Conan the Barbarian that I exist.
So thank you, Arnold.
Yeah, I guess
He mentions that in the book, by the way.
Yeah, cool.
The date.
Yeah.
If I ever meet Schwarzenegger, good work.
Yeah, good work. You try to pat him in the head, and he's just like 6'2". He just smacks you. You're like, oh.
Get out of here.
Yeah, get out of here.
Go on, go.
Get out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think, anything really interesting happened while I was. I've been selling a lot of my Blu-rays and
Oh,
selling
you
my
have?
comics.
Because I saw you. I think you and your sister were at McKay's, right?
I'm clearing out a lot of the
Did you
inventory.
pick anything cool up there?
You're
at
cleaning
McKay's,
out
or-
your comics.
I will say
Tried.
I'll say this. I'll say this. I was gonna save it for this was a birthday present to me, but it really wasn't because I just used it from my sold Blu-rays. I have Watchmen #1 now.
Oh,
They had that at McKay's for and I was just like, well, I'll just get this. Cool. So I have Watchmen #1.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Pretty sweet. So
I'm impressed.
thank you. Yeah, but that's the only. I don't really have that much because, again, this week has been really weird. In that I don't know if it's moved too fast or too slow, but it just felt like a slog, man.
I agree. I will say, just going back to Arnold Schwarzenegger, because that's the only thing I've been thinking about, is I remember thinking that, I was like, man, T2, why is T2 so great, aside from the action and the CG? I also rewatched Terminator Genesis, because it was free on Amazon.
How was that?
It's actually, I stopped it at the 52 minute mark, where they go to 2017, because I remember being like, this is where it gets stupid, and it's still pretty dumb, but I enjoyed it. I think it's a movie that I could see myself down the line, watching.
Jay Courtney.
He's not that good in that.
How's
movie.
Amelia Clark?
I love Amelia Clark in that movie. She's fucking great. She's really good.
She's a great.
And she came out and said, I guess she's never going to do Sarah Connor again. But I would see her as Sarah Connor. She's so good. I think she's really good in that movie.
Yeah, superb.
She's superb. But and then here's the thing. Here's Jake gets emotional watching a movie. I fucking forgot, and this is so lame. I forgot at the end of the movie where Arnold is holding down John Connor, T. Million John Connor, whatever the fuck. Who looks pretty cool when he's not John Connor. Looks kind of cool. But he's holding him down, and they're she's going, Pops, he's gonna fucking kill you. Because the thing's gotta, they gotta turn the. I paid attention really well, because they turn the thing on, it's gonna blow him up, and it's gonna kill you, Pops, now. And John Connor's like, we have to, and he's holding him down, and he turns to John Connor, and he goes, and she's going, Pops, now, and he goes, John Connor, take care of my Sarah, and he hits the button, and I was like, he said my Sarah, again, that's the thing they always love doing in the Terminator movies, is giving
John Connor or Kyle Reese.
Sorry, Kyle Reese. Kyle Reese.
John
take
Connor's
care.
totally the bad guy.
Yeah, Kyle Reese,
And
take care
technically, not born yet.
of my Sarah. But I think the thing that I was talking to some T2 is so cool is I was like, it's kind of like the Iron Giant. But if the Iron Giant,
up and away.
yeah, but if the Iron Giant was a killing machine, and I was like, oh wait, the Iron Giant was a killing machine.
Also voiced by Vin Diesel.
Yeah, but
Who is not
in
Arnold
T2.
Schwarzenegger.
But and I don't remember T2 having Superman references, but I think that one of my favorite lines, I was always wondering why "I'll be back" is a more famous line than "Hasta la vista, baby." And I think it's because of what happens afterwards, the absurdity of him crashing a car in, and this great kind of action set piece afterwards. And that's my favorite.
Yeah.
That's my favorite Terminator look. Is
As
the
a
T800.
as a kid, I always remembered Hasta la Vista, baby.
Yeah, and I think T2 again speaks to us as our generation.
Yeah.
So much so, but the fact that he picks this robot cyborg picks this obscure phrase that he learned earlier to try to be cool. That whole scene.
What do you mean try?
Well, no, you know what I mean? He tried this idea that "Hasta la vista, baby" is not cool. It's never cool, and there's no point for it to be cool.
I mean, Edward Furlong doesn't really sell it.
Of course, but the fact that this
It's only cool because Arnold Schwarzenegger
yes,
says it.
yes,
Before
yes.
shooting frozen Robert Patrick.
yes, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger, yes, everyone. But the fact that this robot decides to pick that line that he learned earlier in a moment where nobody can hear, you know what I mean? It's this perfect.
You know what
moment.
my favorite Schwarzenegger line is in the first two Terminator movies?
Fuck you, asshole.
And that's a good one. But I think I need a vacation.
Oh, yeah. I always loved "fuck you, asshole" because he said it on the Graham Norton show. He's like, I know people yell at me down the street. They're like, I'll be back. Hasta la vista, baby. Fuck you, asshole. And they're like, what? He's like, yeah, fuck you, asshole. So it's like a dead cat in there. But yeah, T2, man. That movie. The fuck, man.
Yeah.
That movie's nuts.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about that.
I think also another reason why T2 wins out a lot is that like we want to see Arnold as the good guy. You know,
Yeah, because
he's the bad guy in the first one.
we have, again, hindsight, and I think I've mentioned this on our, Terminator Genesis episode, is which was way back, is over a year, God. We were all born, or at least became. No, we weren't born. Actually,
We weren't.
Yeah,
I wasn't born.
We were all. Yeah. We don't exist.
Yeah.
No, the welcome to Slathers. That's my limbo now.
Yeah. Okay.
We all, because we were all born. We were all born before Terminator 2, but we all were always, I think, cognizant
Yes.
of Schwarzenegger being a good guy in the Terminator
Oh,
movies.
yeah.
We didn't have the benefit of for me, I saw Terminator 2 before I saw Terminator.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, actually, I saw Terminator. Here's and I probably mentioned this before. We were on a road trip, and I was obsessed with Schwarzenegger because of like Last Action Hero, stuff like that. At a gas station in buttfuck nowhere, we convinced my parents there was a 2-pack VHS of T1 and T2.
I owned that, the silver box.
Yep, and we bought that, and we had a little VCR player in the back of our car, and it was one of our my brother and I's favorite moments on a family vacation because we watched the first Terminator. I made him watch the first Terminator first because we have to watch 1 and then 2. And I don't think he liked 1 that much. And then we watched 2. And I remember the scene with Sarah Connor with she's naked. Like, our parents couldn't see what we were watching. We were just like, oh shit, this is awesome. And then we watched T2. But yeah, you're right, Sam, with the whole idea. And the fact, like you said, Hasta la Vista, baby, is just the coolest thing.
Yeah.
It's the coolest.
For me, I had that same box set. I forget. My dad loved Schwarzenegger movies. It still does, I'm sure. But we, I think they had seen both movies. My parents. But we bought that, and somehow I ended up watching T2 first, and then when did Terminator 2 come out?
Terminator 2,
91, because it's 25th anniversary.
I might have seen that in theaters. Because I'm a little bit older than you guys. A couple months.
Yeah, I was about to say only by a year.
a year and 3 months.
Yeah.
Come on, I'm ancient, guys. But no, my dad was very for a conservative man. He's very liberal with movie ratings. And he's like, oh, it's an action movie. We're going to go see it. I don't care what it's rated. It's more fun when an action movie is rated R. And my kid's going to see it with me. But yeah, no, I guess I didn't, because True Lies was the first R-rated movie I saw in the theater, and that came out plenty later. Who knows? I don't know when I saw it. Maybe I saw T2 on the TV, and then my parents decided to buy the box set.
The television.
Yeah. Or Blockbuster. Blockbuster was a thing.
Yeah. But yeah,
thank you, Terminator 2, for existing, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's the best. But yeah. So yeah, you guys got anything?
No.
Because again, uneventful shits.
Yeah.
But hey,
just ramblings about Terminator.
Speaking of good things, though, you should totally check out The Legacy of Luther Strode, along with the other Luther Strode books, out in comic shops everywhere and on Comixology. Thanks again to Justin Jordan and Trad Moore for coming on the show. Maybe see you guys in San Diego. Maybe not, but we'll
hopefully.
Try. We'll try.
I just remembered one other thing that happened this week, and we were doing it while we were eating, Sam. Pokemon Go came out.
Oh, yeah. I'm terrible at that game.
Yeah, I worked
14 Pokemon.
I was the day that it came out, which here in the States was 9 o'clock at night when it finally got released.
Yeah, it's been out for a full
was
week.
The last day that I had off, and then I had to work the next 4 days in a row, so I didn't really get much exploring done. I walked around my neighborhood a little bit.
Our mutual friend Mike, by Friday, him and Sophocles had 80-some Pokemon. Yeah. I've got 14.
Don't believe any of those fake news stories about huge car accidents and stuff like that. None of them are real.
Yeah, yet.
The girl finding a dead body, I think that one's real.
Yeah, and of course people getting robbed because people are already taking advantage of the waypoints.
Yeah, and the lures.
Yeah.
Because it's not just for luring Pokemon, but it's also for luring stupid kids.
Yeah, so
that's why there are no waypoints at schools.
Yeah, so play safe.
Yeah.
Play safe. But yeah, this has been another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
I'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.
Good night, Eric Bana.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a new commentary every Monday. We've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.